What the Study Says.
Welcome back to What the Study Says. I'm Dr. Kai.
And I'm Dr. May.
From environmental concerns to really personal health goals, it feels like more and more people are rethinking what's on their plate. We see it everywhere, right? Headlines, social media, all praising plant-based eating. But beyond the buzz, what does the science actually say about going vegetarian or vegan? Is it really this holy grail?
Yeah.
Or are there hidden issues, maybe some pitfalls we need to know about?
Yeah, that's exactly what we want to dig into today.
Absolutely. So today, we're diving deep into several big scientific reviews and meta-analyses. Our mission: let's unpack the evidence. How do these diets really impact things like heart disease, cancer, specific nutrient levels, even bone health? We'll look at the benefits, sure, but also the crucial things to consider if you're following this path or just thinking about it, giving you a clear, evidence-based picture. So, yeah, let's get into it.
Okay. So when you look at the bulk of the research, it's pretty clear a lot of studies do suggest some pretty significant benefits for plant-based diets. There was a big 2017 systematic review, a meta-analysis that kind of set the stage, and newer research tends to back it up. These diets seem to offer some real advantages.
Okay, let's break that down. Cardiovascular health first. Looking at the heart, the evidence really does point to some, significant pluses for vegetarians.
It definitely seems that way. That 2017 review, the DNews study, found a pretty remarkable 25% reduced risk of getting or dying from ischemic heart disease, things like heart attacks. That's of vegetarians compared to omnivores.
25%, wow.
Yeah. And more recently, a 2023 meta-analysis, this one by Dybvik and colleagues, found even vegans saw about an 18% reduction in that IHD risk, though it's worth mentioning the vegan part was based on fewer studies, so the number isn't quite as, precise as the one for vegetarians.
Right, so the trend is there for vegans too, but maybe with slightly wider error bars, sort of?
Exactly. Fewer data points means a bit less certainty on the exact number, but still an important finding. And what's maybe even more compelling, that same Dybvik study also found a 15% reduction in overall cardiovascular disease risk, CVD risk, for vegetarians.
Okay, and that's notable. Why?
Well, because previous big reviews often didn't find a clear link for overall CVD. They might find it for specific things like IHD, but not the whole category. So this really strengthens the argument for broader heart benefits.
So why? What's actually happening physiologically? What are the mechanisms behind these heart benefits?
Good question. It's not just random chance. If you look at cross-sectional studies, like the ones included in that Dinya review, you see some patterns. Vegetarians and vegans pretty consistently show lower levels of key risk factors for chronic disease compared to omnivores.
Like what, specifically?
Okay, so body mass index, BMI, it's lower. About 1.5 points lower for vegetarians, and even a bit more, 1.7 points for vegans on average. So yeah, generally leaner.
Which makes sense. Lower BMI is generally good for heart health.
Absolutely. And then there's cholesterol. Total cholesterol was way lower, like 28 milligrams per deciliter lower for vegetarians, 31 lower for vegans, and maybe more importantly, LDL cholesterol, the bad kind, also significantly lower. About 21 points lower for vegetarians, almost 23 for vegans. Even blood glucose levels tended to be lower. And this all seems linked to, eating less total unsaturated fat, obviously, but also eating more of things like soybeans, legumes, nuts, healthy vegetable oils. It's about what you're not eating, but also very much about what you are eating.
Right, the positive replacements. Okay, so it's not just about the heart. What about cancer, the big C?
Yeah, the DNews study looked at that too. It reported an 8% reduced risk of total cancer incidence for vegetarians.
Okay, 8% overall.
And for vegans, the reduction looked even bigger, around 15%, though again, that was based on fewer studies, so similar caveat about precision as before.
Got it. But interestingly, that study didn't find significant links for specific types of cancer, right? Like colorectal, breast, prostate, lung. It was more about the overall risk.
That's correct. The signal was strongest for total cancer incidence, not necessarily those specific individual sites in that particular analysis.
Okay. So beyond those big ones, heart disease, cancer, what other potential benefits are popping up in the research?
Well, quite a few things seem to be linked. Healthy plant-based diets are often associated with lower blood pressure and also a lower risk of type 2 diabetes. We have randomized trials showing actual reductions in systolic blood pressure, maybe 3 to 7 points mAhg, and also drops in HbA1c, that marker for long-term blood sugar control, so real clinical improvement.
That's significant. It suggests a pretty wide-ranging metabolic effect.
It does. And then there's the gut microbiome. Healthy vegetarian diets seem to positively influence it. You get more beneficial bacteria, more production of short-chain fatty acids. These fatty acids might help lower blood pressure, improve immune function. It's a really active area of research. Plus, these diets tend to result in lower levels of compounds like TMAO, that's trimethylamine N oxide.
Ah, yes, the compound linked to red meat and heart risk.
Exactly. Gut bacteria make it from stuff in animal products. Lower levels are generally seen as a good thing for heart health. And don't forget inflammation and antioxidants. These diets are usually packed with dietary antioxidants, phytochemicals, plant compounds that can cool down systemic and vascular inflammation. Another protective layer.
Any other potential links?
There's even a little bit of data, though it's very limited, from one small study in Taiwan suggesting vegetarians might have a lower dementia risk. But honestly, we need way more research before saying much about that. It's just a hint right now.
Okay, so that all sounds incredibly promising. A lot of potential upsides. But, like with any diet pattern, especially one that cuts out whole food groups, there have got to be nuances, potential drawbacks, things to watch out for. It can't be as simple as just stop eating meat and everything gets better.
Yeah.
You need to be smart about it.
That's a really crucial point. It's not automatic. And that brings us straight to maybe the most critical nutrient to discuss, vitamin B12.
Ah, yes, B12.
It's absolutely essential. You need it for neurological development, making red blood cells, just basic metabolic health. And the challenge is it's almost exclusively found in animal products: meat, fish, eggs, dairy.
So what does the deficiency risk actually look like, especially for strict vegans who cut out all animal sources?
Yeah, vegans are at a significantly higher risk. There was a 2024 meta-analysis, Nikolic and colleagues, and it was really clear. Vegans who didn't supplement had much lower levels of B12 in their blood, measured directly. But more importantly, they had higher levels of things called total homocysteine and methylmalonic acid, or MMA.
And
Those are functional biomarkers. Basically, high levels mean your body isn't using B12 properly at the cellular level, even if a basic blood test might look borderline. It's a sign of functional deficiency. Things aren't working right.
Okay, so that's vegans. What about vegetarians? They might still eat dairy or eggs. Are they generally okay, or is there still a concern?
Still a concern, definitely. Dairy does have B12, but often less than meat. Think like 0.2 to 0.7 micrograms per 100 grams in milk versus maybe 2.4 in cooked beef. Big difference. And, maybe vegetarians aren't always as diligent about supplementing as vegans might be because they think they're covered. Some studies show they still have lower B12 status than omnivores.
And there's that issue with folate masking the symptoms, right?
Exactly. High folate intake, which is pretty common in plant-heavy diets from all the leafy greens, can actually hide the early blood signs of B12 deficiency, like anemia. So you might not realize there's a problem until neurological symptoms pop up, like fatigue or tingling, that pins and needles feeling.
Yikes, that's kind of sneaky. So what's the clear solution then? If you're eating plant-based, how do you make sure you're getting enough B12?
Well, the Nikolic study showed plainly B12 supplementation works. It significantly improved all those biomarker levels in vegans. Fortified foods are also key. Things like breakfast cereals, maybe some meat substitutes, certain plant milks, nutritional yeast, check the labels. It really comes down to being proactive. You need a reliable source, either supplements or fortified foods consistently.
Okay, B12 is critical. Got it. Beyond B12, what other nutrients need careful planning for plant-based eaters?
Yeah, there are a few others to keep an eye on, especially if the diet isn't well-rounded. Iron is a big one.
Right, plant iron versus animal iron.
Exactly. Plant iron that's non-heme iron is just less easily absorbed than the heme iron in animal products. Plus, plants have compounds like phytates, tannins, oxalates, sometimes called anti-nutrients, that can bind to iron and reduce absorption further.
So how do you boost absorption?
Good news is you can. Cooking helps. So does sprouting or fermenting plant foods. And a really key trick is eating iron-rich plant foods with vitamin C. Think citrus fruits, strawberries, broccoli, tomatoes, bell peppers. Vitamin C significantly boosts non-meaty iron absorption.
Oh, so like lentils with tomatoes or spinach salad with orange slices?
Perfect examples. Then there's zinc. Similar issue with bioavailability due to phytates and fiber. Again, soaking, sprouting can help. Dairy and fortified cereals are good sources for vegetarians. Vegans need to focus on whole grains, legumes, nuts.
Okay. What about calcium and vitamin D? especially for kids.
Yeah, critical
Okay.
for kids. If they're avoiding dairy, meeting calcium needs can be tough, especially during growth spurts. Some plants, like cabbage and broccoli, actually have highly bioavailable calcium, which is great. But getting enough volume can be the challenge. So fortified foods, soy milk, other plant milks, cereals become really important. And vitamin D often needs attention too, either through fortified foods, enough sun exposure, or supplements, especially if you're not drinking fortified milk.
Makes sense. And you mentioned iodine and omega-3s earlier, too.
Right. Iodine can be low in plant foods generally, unless you eat seaweed regularly. Iodized salt is the main source for many, so if you use uniodized salt, like sea salt or kosher salt sometimes, you might need to think about iodine. And omega-3s, vegetarian diets often have plenty of omega-6 fats, but can be low in omega-3s, particularly the long-chain ones, EPA and DHA, unless you specifically include sources like flax seeds, chia seeds, walnuts, or algae oil supplements. Vegans often have lower blood levels of EPA and DHA.
Okay, so careful planning is definitely needed. Now, here's something that really jumped out at me from the research, something that might surprise people. Bone health, specifically fracture risk.
Yes, this was a significant finding. A large study using UK Biobank data, Webster and colleagues in 2023, reported something quite striking. Vegetarians had a 50% higher risk of hip fracture compared to regular meat eaters.
Wow, 50%. That sounds high. How did that translate in real numbers?
Well, the researchers calculated it translates to about 3.2 extra hip fractures per 1,000 people over a 10-year period. So the absolute risk difference isn't enormous, but the relative risk increase is definitely notable.
Okay, 3 extra per 1,000 over 10 years puts it in perspective a bit. Did they figure out why? You mentioned lower BMI earlier.
They did look into that. Lower BMI in the vegetarian group, they were leaner on average, explained about 28% of that increased risk. Lower body weight can mean less padding in a fall, maybe less load-bearing, stress-stimulating bone density over time.
But that still leaves a big chunk unexplained.
Exactly. Over 70% of the increased risk wasn't accounted for by BMI. So researchers are looking at other factors. Could it be lower intake of calcium, vitamin D, maybe protein? Protein quality and quantity are important for bone structure. Maybe specific amino acid profiles matter. It really highlights an area needing more investigation.
It certainly does. And this all ties back to another really crucial point. The quality of the plant-based diet matters hugely. It's not just about cutting meat out, it's about what you put in.
Absolutely critical. A point strongly made in the Wang review from 2023. You can have a vegetarian or vegan diet that's loaded with junk.
Like what kind of junk? Give us the unhealthy picture.
Think refined flours, white bread, sugary cereals, loads of added sugars like high fructose corn syrup, hydrogenated oils, artificial sweeteners, tons of salt, preservatives, basically ultra-processed foods. Even if these products have a vegan label, vegan cookies, vegan chips, sugary plant milks, if that's the bulk of your diet, it can actually increase your risk of problems. Insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome, fatty liver, heart disease, even cancer. The label doesn't make it healthy.
Right, so the focus has to be on the healthy version.
Yes. A healthy plant-based diet is built around fresh vegetables, fruits, legumes like beans and lentils, minimally processed whole grains, nuts, seeds, and healthy fats from sources like avocados and olive oil. It's about whole, nutrient-dense foods, quality over just category.
And we should also touch on specific groups, right, like children.
Definitely. Kids are growing fast, so their nutrient needs, especially for things like iron, are high relative to their size. Now, vegetarian kids often have lower obesity risk and better cholesterol levels, which is great, but parents need to plan carefully to make sure they get enough calories. Plant foods can be bulky and high in fiber and meet all their nutrient needs, like B12, iron, zinc, calcium, D.
And pregnant or breastfeeding women.
Similar situation, even higher demands. B12 and iron needs shoot up during pregnancy and lactation. And as we mentioned, mom's B12 status is critical for the baby's neurological development. So for these groups, meticulous planning, often including supplementation, becomes even more essential. It's not something to guess about.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. What's the bottom line for our listeners? Our deep dive seems to show that, yes, well-planned vegetarian and vegan diets really can offer some solid benefits. Heart health, lower risk factors for chronic diseases like obesity, high cholesterol, type 2 diabetes, maybe even total cancer. The evidence is pretty compelling there.
It is compelling, yes. But, and this is a big but, it's also crystal clear that just slapping a plant-based label on your eating style doesn't guarantee health. A well-planned diet focusing on whole, minimally processed foods is absolutely key, and you have to pay attention to those potential nutrient gaps, B12 first and foremost, but also iron, zinc, calcium, vitamin D, omega-3s, especially if you're vegan or for kids or during pregnancy. Supplements and fortified foods aren't optional extras. They're often necessary tools to make these diets safe and adequate. And to avoid risks like B12 deficiency, or perhaps surprisingly, that higher hip fraction risk.
So it feels like these studies aren't just saying eat this, not that. They're really telling us how to eat, whatever pattern we choose, emphasizing wisdom and planning. They highlight the incredible power of food, but also the need for balance, for nutrient awareness. Maybe the biggest takeaway isn't about choosing a diet name, but about mastering the how, the careful planning, the mindful choices that really optimize your health, whatever your dietary philosophy might be.
Well said. It really comes down to nutrient density and informed choices. That's what empowers you to thrive.
A powerful summary. It truly emphasizes making informed choices. Thanks so much for breaking all that down, and thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the science behind plant-based eating. If you found this useful, please do subscribe and maybe share it with someone else who's curious about what the studies really say. We'll be back soon with our next deep dive.